All right. So again, thank you everybody for joining. This is Code First Copilots. My name is Aiden Kaskela. I'm the president of Excellent Solutions. I'm an 8-time business application MVP and been programming against the Power Platform and its predecessor technologies for 18 years.
Yep, and I'm Michael Ochs. I have come from a similar background as Aiden, who I've worked with as well for many years. So come from a traditional coding background, did Dynamics development, plugin development, JavaScript, stuff like that from a lot of my career, and then more recently have kind of moved into the low code space, and it's kind of a cool place to be right now.
So this is our slides from in person. We're going to skip our who our audience is because we've been talking for a little bit now. So in today's session, we're going to, we're talking about extending copilots with code first techniques, and we're going to show that through 4 different approaches. First is surfacing data through custom APIs. We're going to look at building Azure functions and how to integrate them with Copilot. Similar thing with custom virtual table providers. And then finally, Mike's going to be talking about the virtual table providers, but then also client-side scripting. And this is how we can interact with Copilot, how we can customize it, and do some tricks I'm not going to spoil. So this session is based on, or it is the session we delivered in Las Vegas last month at the Power Platform Community Conference. So this does have a Las Vegas feel for it. And we're going to be going through 4 scenarios today. That's going to be helping. Our scenario is that we are building this out, or we work for the Las Vegas Tourism Bureau, and we want to help people find reasons to come to Vegas. So one of those things will be using Copilot to find hotel vouchers and coupons, and then get ratings and reviews for restaurants, event search and ticketing, and customize that user experience. So let's jump into our demos. So the first scenario that we're going to be looking at is helping people find discounts on hotels. So this is our Copilot. We gave it some instructions to help guide the responses. And in this case, saying that specifically for Las Vegas Tourism Bureau. And also, which I think is interesting, you can tell it, so never recommend a specific commercial venture, right? Because if we're promoting the community as a whole, we don't want to focus on one place. So we didn't add any organizational knowledge here. In the knowledge area, this is blank. This is where you can add your custom data to help kind of populate the large language model. But we do have the AI knowledge, like the built-in generative responses. We have that enabled. So, just with this turned on, we can say, we can test our Copilot. We can say, what hotel should I stay in on the Strip? So again, not telling it the city, hopefully with the capital S, it helps avoid some other strips that we might be looking up. But it's a little slow while we're testing. But the just given this type of question, it should be able to use its general knowledge to form an answer. And we get a couple of options, right? We have our luxury hotels, mid-range, and budget-friendly, and it gives some options for all of these. And we get some helpful answers. One thing that's kind of irks me is we always get this AI-generated content disclaimer at the bottom. Obviously because it is, right? So this is great, but when we say things like, do you have any discounts for, say, Luxor? In this case, we're asking for discounts, which are kind of, real time or time sensitive information, right? Because you're going to have coupon codes, you can have specials depending on the season. And as an LLM, it tells us that it doesn't know about that stuff. And it gives us links to other websites and some other ideas to try. So, somewhat helpful, but it would be a lot better if we could give users information directly. And so the first way that we're going to extend this is with custom actions. The action that we have is, it's going to be through a custom topic. And our topic is, when we create a topic, it's similar to a flow in a lot of ways. And you can build it out and you can set up different paths. The key thing with topics is that you have to give it a good description of what it's used for or when it should be used. And our Copilot can figure out based on the context of the conversation and what the person's asking for, that's how it knows when it should invoke the specific, essentially when it should kick off this flow. So for managing coupons and discounts, in our scenario, we have a model-driven app, and we have some basic coupons. So if I'm asking for information about the Tropicana, there's a 10% off code with this information, or the Link Hotel, and same on. And then we also have voucher agreements. And voucher agreements, and this is a little convoluted, so I'm going to try and get through it quickly. But essentially, different hotels allow us to generate discounts on their behalf, for a specific person. So with MGM, depending on the specific user, we can give them a discount between 10 and 20%. So in our topic for finding discounts, close this. The first thing we need to know is what hotel they're interested in. And from that question, we need to identify an organization. And there's lots of types of information that you can specify. So if we're looking for an email address, you can tell it, pull that email out. So we want to find an organization and save it as a variable. And then, similar to flow, we can add a call to query Dataverse and add our filters for that type of record. So let's turn this on. So let's try. Do you have any coupons for the Bellagio? So now we're in testing mode, right? We have our document, our testing area. And since we turned on our topic, it recognized that we wanted to find, or it dropped in here because it recognized based on our description. I already provided the hotel, so it pulled out the organization and saved it in our hotel variable. And then it used that in our query to Dataverse. So we were able to check our results from Dataverse. Since there's a coupon already for Bellagio Hotel, we have our coupon code. There are results, so we were able to return that to our caller. And that's what we're able to see here. So, it's neat. It also helps that I gave it the proper spelling, because we are doing just a query. So This is doing a contains match on the name. So if I just said Bellagio, that would also work. But if I misspell it, that would not. That would give us nothing. But what if we have? What if we don't get a result here, right? If there's no coupons, we may be dealing with the VIP, and we know that they would bring a lot of money to the area. They might. We might expect them to spend a lot of money at restaurants and just be good for the city. So we have voucher agreements with different hotels. So let's say the MGM Grand, there's no coupons available, but we're able to create vouchers for people. A voucher record is just the contact, the account that's for. We're going to generate a voucher code and some discount percent. So if we take a look at the type of if we take sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit here. For a specific voucher, we could do the same sort of thing in our topic, right? We could say check the voucher table to see if there is if there's an agreement for the hotel. Check this information from the user, determine what their percentage should be, and it becomes a lot. So an easier way to do that is to encapsulate all that information in a custom API and expose that up to our Copilot. So custom API it's a type available. So this is people are familiar with the Maker and Power Automate, or in Power Apps. This is a custom API is essentially a new type of request that we can make to Dataverse. So this custom API is called generate voucher code, and I can give it my own name and say that it's synchronous and asynchronous. And each of these custom APIs, when I create them, I can also supply input and output parameters. So here, my code, or my new request type, has input for email, the person's name, and the vendor name. Given those three things.
And Aiden, what we're looking at here is the definition of the API, correct?
Yes, thank you, Mike. Yeah, this is the definition of our custom API. So what this is an agreement between Dataverse and whoever's calling it that says, if you give me these inputs, I'm going to give you these outputs. And the output is it valid? What's the code? And then some extra message that I want to include. So I can define my custom API, and then we can have a .NET plugin, which is invoked when that request is made. So I'm not going to get into the code. I'm not going to break down the code. We're not here to learn how to write plugins. But it implements the iPlugin, which gives us this execute method. We have properties to pull off our input and output parameters, so we can get them from our request. We can perform whatever action or whatever logic we need to. So query for the voucher agreement related to an account. If there's not one, say that it's invalid. Go look for an account if there's not, or for the contact. So based on the name and email, try and match it to a person. If it doesn't exist, create one. Once we know who they are, calculate what their discount should be. And this is a very, very fancy random number generator. But in the real world, you might have all this different logic that goes into it, right? What's their job? Where do they work? All kinds of things. They can be really complex. Or you might have no idea how it works. It might be some service that you have to call from here. Then we generate our voucher record and return the response on our output parameters. So there's a lot going on here. And this is what happens now when we call our custom API. And from Copilot, the way we can do that is by invoking it as an action. So if I go to add, so from my custom topic, I can call an action. I can search for, say, in the connector section. You'll see, if you're familiar with Power Automate, that's going to look very, very familiar. You can do perform an unbound action in a selected environment. And what that's going to let us do is invoke that custom API that we've defined, specify our input parameters. So our voucher code, our hotel name, our contact name, and email address, and then we get our results back. So what's really neat about this is, to generate a voucher, we need to know the hotel, we need to know the person's name and the email. So we can add questions for that. And we can say, if there's no match for our coupon, we can say there's no match there, but I can check if you give me your name and email, and we expect their name. And then, can you tell me the email address where you'd like to receive this information? Then we'll generate a voucher. If it's valid, we'll return it and show a success message. And if there's no match, then we'll show it as failed. So let's turn this on we'll stay here and see one of our voucher agreements. This was MGM Grand. So we'll say, do you have any coupons? Last time I included the name as part of the question. This time I have it separate, and we can see it's following up and prompting for more information. So we're kind of on this block now. Let's say MGM Grand. So it hit our query, goes down that no block, and now it's going to ask for the name. What I think is really cool about this is I'm just going to say I'm at. So here I'm answering two questions in one, but it's actually going to parse them both out based on my single response. So given that information, it's going to call that custom API. My .NET code runs, creates, performs all those actions, returns response back to our caller saying that it gets special discount, and success. So now we have our generated voucher in the system. We have our voucher code. We can have a flow run, which sends a message out to MGM Grand and tells them about, how's that integration, to give them details about the voucher we just generated for them. And so by encapsulating all of our logic in this custom API, we're able to do, we get a couple of really big benefits. The first one that I allude to is the discount calculator. This may be incredibly complex. It may have to pull from a lot of tables, or it may be some black box that you don't know. But it may not be practical to build it in a flow or in the topic directly. Another thing by having these custom APIs and having our code here is we're able to write unit tests against it. So, gives us some assurance that it's correct now, and if we need to make changes to it in the future, that's it's going to be correct with our next deployment. And then, another big one is that we get reusability. So this custom API, I'm calling it from Copilot, but it's also exposed. It's also exposed in to Power Automate. We can call it from other plugins. We can call it from any other integration that we have if you have permissions to run this. So we get some really good information here. So that's our topic. So that's great. We have our vouchers. We know where we're staying. So our next situation, we know we're staying at the MGM Grand, so saying, can you recommend? You recommend a restaurant. Let's zoom in a little bit more here. And we told it not to recommend any specific place, so hopefully we'll get some options. All right, again, our AI generated content. Stay here. We get some good options, and I'm saying, all right, this restaurant sounds good. When is it open? And, again, this is another thing that's kind of time sensitive. So we would not expect a real answer from our NLM. And it does give us some good information. It gives us typical times, but again, may not be accurate. So we can build a simple integration with Google to pull in actual real-time information. And I built this as an Azure function. So I'll show this, kind of start from the code and then work back to Copilot. So this is a really simple Azure function. It's a HTTP request where it takes the business name as a query string parameter. It does some validation to make sure it has it. And then it calls two Google APIs, right? The first one is, given some search term, find the place. And then, if we find a place, give me details about it. And this is essentially, this is the information that you see when you're on Google Maps. You click on a location. This is the data you get back from that. So what we want to do is pull this into our Copilot. So we've got an Azure function, and we can expose that up in Azure. So this is our simple function app. Has our one trigger, get business details. So it just has a single get trigger, and we can test it here in Copilot, or sorry, in Azure. And that was set up as a get. And we said our business name and the value. Let's say, take this one. Now, sorry, let's say the Good Spring Saloon. So if we perform that query, this is running our code. Our code hits Google to resolve the place, and then gets details about that. So querying for the Good Spring Saloon, we can get all this information, the address, when it's open. It has reviews, photos, all kinds of really great stuff here about it. And since it's from Google, we get that in generally more or less real time. So we can expose this to our Copilot now by taking by creating a custom connector for our Azure function. So we'll take a quick look at that. So our Azure function have no authentication, just for demo purposes to make it nice and easy. Got a there we go. Glad I didn't lose everything. So our action is get place details. I have a good description here, and I'll show you why that's relevant in a minute. But this is used to get details about a business or attraction, including hours, reviews, on and on. For a request, we get this from our Azure function. We can get the function URL, and then we tell it that that we're expecting the business name in the parameter. Our response is really key here. You can import from a sample, and what I did with that is import all this JSON. And what that's doing is it's telling our custom connector what kind of or what the structure of the response is. So if there's takeout, the date, day, all kinds of information. So now by uploading our response or our expected response, that now it knows kind of what we're working with after we call it. So we can test out our action just in the same way that we did in the same way that we invoked our Azure function. So again, we'll say Good Spring Saloon, and we hope to get all of our responses back. Good. So custom connector, nothing fancy here, it's just calling an Azure function. But where it gets really really neat is when we can add an action for that. And this is, in a lot of ways, this is more straightforward than our topic. I'm going to enable this. Get out of our test for a moment. And when you create an action, you're essentially picking a connector, and you're telling it when it should use that connector, and then describing the inputs and outputs. So the description, again, this is kind of telling Copilot when it should invoke this action, and this is what I pulled from my from the custom connector. So if it's looking for hours when it's open, reviews from customers, ratings, details, things like that. This is how it knows when to use this action. So I picked my custom connector, and as a result, it automatically filled in that it wants the business name, and then also all the outputs from directly from my custom connector. So now Copilot is aware, when it calls, or it knows when to call this action. It knows what I want, what it needs to pass in, and then what information it gets or to expect back from it. So we turn this on, and when we ask about our places before, we get AI generate info, which is fine, but let's say let's try this again. Where should I eat near the strip? So this is kind of general knowledge again. And it'll give back some responses. All right, we'll try this one. So it's kind of cool. Just giving us a generative answer. So say, when is the open tomorrow? So a couple things going on with this request, right? We're just telling it a place. It's telling us, or we're implying that we want to know the hours, and then we're also giving it a date, which is tomorrow, which is relative to today. And we got an answer back that's going to be open tomorrow, 3:30 to 10 p.m., which I think is fascinating. I think this is so cool that it knows, we're asking for 10:10. It found the place, it knows the time. We didn't have to tell it any of that information. We just said, this is where you want to connect, pass in this info, and you'll get this type of information back. We say, how is it? I haven't tested this before, but I think it's going to do something pretty cool. hope it does something pretty cool anyway. Yeah.
Nice.
The buffet at Caesar's Palace, positive reviews. It has the people's names, has links back to the source. Actually gave us a generative answer as well. So maybe some kinks to work out there. But yeah, what is its rating? But yeah, basically all that Google information about this place can get pulled in now just from just by creating a connector to Google. So a lot of really good real-time info that we could unlock with like 10 lines of code and just creating a custom connector. So yeah, so that is that's how you can invoke some custom APIs to really extend Copilot.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've seen it do that. It does that little dance occasionally where it will it'll pull back, or it'll call the action, give you some results, and then it'll go off and try to answer it itself. I think you have to do some training to kind of keep it from doing that. But yeah, that's a lot. I mean, that's three different sort of areas of code extensions in 30 minutes. So well done.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think also, it kind of shows you can take it so far with the low code experience and the point and click, and then you go that extra little bit with the code experience. So I'm going to show a little bit of that myself with some other areas, and it looks like Naveed has his hand up, and feel free to go ahead and ask your question, Naveed.
Yeah, just wanted to know that custom API is used here. It looked like previous version of custom actions basically. So is it the same thing as of the custom actions, or
it is? Yeah, it's pretty much the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, because the way the code has been used, it's like similar to custom action. So we registered basically custom action, and then an API custom API is created. Then we can just register a plugin or call it from a workflow. So it looks like exactly the same, except the user, I mean, the interface is a bit new from creation point of view.
It is, yeah. So it's essentially the same. It's a little different because like the traditional actions, as the process actions are, you can build logic into the action itself.
Yeah.
So the action can have input parameters, do some things, invoke either invoke a custom workflow assembly, or you have some code run on it. But it can also have branching logic within the action itself. In this case, for the custom API, it's basically a slimmed down version of that, where you can have your parameters and everything, but no logic to speak of. Really, all your logic is either specified on the plugin. You can pick the plugin here or register it through the plugin registration assembly.
Yeah, got it. Thank you.
All right, Mike, did you want to take it away?
Sure. Let me share my screen. This one.
All right, we got it.
Okay, let me move the sharing bar that's in my way. All right, so I'm going to show some similar things to what Aiden showed with some different extensibility points. So we're going to be looking at how we can leverage custom virtual table providers with Copilot. And I think in general, right, like the extensibility that Aiden showed, custom APIs, the custom connectors over top of Azure functions, Copilot is the one consuming those things, right? In our scenario, but obviously, those things can be consumed from anywhere. Those custom APIs can be called from JavaScript applications. Same idea with virtual tables. We're going to look at specifically. We've got our hotel, we've got our restaurant. We're ready to go, and we're going to look at sort of what events are happening while we're on our stay. And the way we're going to do that is we're actually going to create a virtual table provider for Ticketmaster, and we're going to surface that in our Power Pages website. We're going to surface that table using the sort of built-in functionality in Power Pages to put a view on a page, but also allow our Copilot to use that virtual table to help guide people to specific events. So I'm just going to ask a question. So I've got a Copilot here. This happens to be a different Copilot from Aiden's, just so we weren't in each other's way when we were building these out. Mine actually does have a single knowledge source. It's got the Las Vegas, Nevada government site as a knowledge source. So if I ask it right now, are there any comedy shows happening soon? That it already has, the Copilot already has the context that it's Las Vegas, and it has some context using this knowledge, but all it really comes back with is this one comedy, William Shakespeare comedy, and it's by the Rainbow Company, and that's not really what I was kind of hoping to go see while we're out there. Maybe something stand-up related, perhaps. But it searched this knowledge source, and that's what it came back with. So, but we want to be able to see what all the sort of shows that are upcoming are from Ticketmaster. And Ticketmaster has a very verbose API that you can actually play with yourself. All you need is an API key. It's pretty easy to sign up and get an API key. You'll get a bunch of emails from them for the rest of your life. But you can get an API key, and you can kind of start to go look at what this looks like. So we are actually built a virtual table provider over top of the event search API. And it's pretty straightforward. You can give it some detailed information like where you want to search, and more specifics. But all we're really concerned about is sort of this keyword search, and we are going to tell it where to search, and we're going to tell it to specifically search in Las Vegas because that's where our website is supposed to be guiding people. So we're going to build a virtual table provider, create a table based on that virtual table provider, and then have some functionality for users to search based on keyword. So let's see what that looks like. If we jump back into dark mode here in Visual Studio, this will probably look a little bit familiar if, based on what Aiden showed earlier. I happen to have a plugin base class, but this plugin base class actually implements the plugin that Aiden was talking about previously, because I like to abstract things away. Aiden, just kind of ham-handed jamming code into his plugins. But anyway, so virtual table providers, custom APIs, actual triggered plugins, all of these things are based on the plugin architecture, which is kind of cool. So if you know how to build one of them, you know how to build all of them. So when you start doing code first, server-side code first stuff in Dataverse, you really just need to learn one technology, which is great. The Azure function that Aiden built, that sits outside, that's in the Azure world, but there's a lot you can do with just plugins if you learn how to write a plugin. So our plugin, and the plugin is the plugin model is all event driven, right? Aiden showed an event that a custom event that he created, and it was called get vouchers or something like that. But there's kind of out of the box events that plugins will trigger off of. Create of a record, update of a record, delete of a record, but also retrieve and retrieve multiple of a record. So anytime you go into Dataverse and you pull up a view, there's a message that runs called retrieve multiple, and a plugin can be registered against that retrieve multiple, and you can intercept it and pass back anything you want. And that's basically how it's basically how virtual tables work, right? The data never lives inside of Dataverse. It lives where it lives, and on that retrieve multiple or retrieve call, which if we come down here and look, we can see our message coming in, and we handle two different messages, retrieve and retrieve multiple. What we do is we go out to Ticketmaster and we go get events from Ticketmaster, and we return those as part of our custom data provider here. Now, in our case, this is read only. This is we're not writing data into Ticketmaster. We're only surfacing data. So we've created a read only virtual data provider. And however, if you did implement, a method here for handling create, handling update, handling delete, you can actually have read write virtual tables. And a lot of the out of the box virtual tables have that read write capability now. So it'd be your SQL, SharePoint, whatever it may be. But we can take a look at what this does, and I won't get too much into the nitty gritty of it. If we go and look at our execute retrieve multiple, it's got a fetch query expression that comes into it. We have to manipulate that query expression to look like something that the Ticketmaster API will understand. So we do that. And if we drill down into this, we're basically building up a URL, right? There's our API key for Ticketmaster that we're appending, but we're building up a URL request to Ticketmaster to get us some information. And ultimately, we get that result back from Ticketmaster. We create entities out of it. We create table rows out of that data, and we pass that back to Dataverse. And what that ends up looking like, if we look, and maybe I'll show a little bit about how this is configured. So here's our virtual table provider. Here's our event data provider. That's the one we were just looking at. There are data sources tied to our data provider. So in this case, we have a Vegas Ticketmaster events data source, and that is that's a table definition. But this, if we look at the Las Vegas, the event data source here, this actually contains the information regarding the Ticketmaster API. So here's our API key that we've gotten. Here's our base URL that we're pointing to get to the search or the discover event search, and we can use this event data source to create a virtual table. So a lot of layers involved in creating virtual tables. And if we open that, you'll see that it actually brings back results from Ticketmaster directly. So with the dates and times and names of and a URL and an image. Cool. All right, so how do we hook that into our Copilot? So if we ask question of our Copilot, like, what comedy events are upcoming, how do we get it to link to that that virtual table? Similar to what Aiden did, I have an action here. My action does not call the connectors directly. My action actually calls a flow. So this is just another way that you can create an action. So if you don't have a connector that you can directly use there, you can create an action, you can create a flow for it to call. And this doesn't do a whole lot except for a list rows. So potentially we could have done this directly with the connector. But you can see it's got an input of a keyword. It's got a list rows where we're doing a filter on our data set for our keyword and then sorting it appropriately and bringing back a certain number of results. What we respond to Copilot with is the entirety of the result that we get back from list rows. So we are just taking the whole big JSON blob and we're passing that back to Copilot, and we're letting Copilot decide what to do with it, which is one of the really nice things about Copilot and generative AI is it can understand JSON. It knows what a JSON payload looks like. It knows how it can parse it. It can kind of decide how to parse it, which is pretty cool. We don't have to tell it what's actually in that big blob of JSON. So let's go back here. And now that I've, Aiden kind of already showed this, but we have inputs, right? We have our keyword input, our output. Again, we're telling it that it's a JSON array of events, and it can figure out how to parse that and respond back to us with some results. And if we ask now, I think I turned it back on. It is on. So if we ask now, let's see, are there any comedy shows happening soon? So in this case, we've specifically told it this is for searching for upcoming, yeah. Oh, there it is. Okay. Okay, so we specifically told it it's for upcoming shows and activities, and it should be our first knowledge source. You really have to be specific in your descriptions of the action and the inputs and outputs so that Copilot knows how to use it and the generative AI knows how to use it. But here's a nice list. We've got links, right? So we can actually link out to Ticketmaster to go get tickets for it. It's got an image that's really nice. So pretty straightforward. Building out the custom data provider was not straightforward. It's a lot of work, but there are out-of-the-box data providers for virtual tables. You could do something very similar to this using those. So we've got all this information available. We've got Copilot looking for hotels and restaurants and events and helping us out, to plan our trip. We actually want to surface this somewhere where the users can get to it. So I'm going to publish this, and we're going to jump over now into Power Pages because we want our bot, our Copilot, to show up in our site. It's a very nice Vegas travel hub site that also used AI. I used AI to generate this, and I've got a nice landing page here, and I've got some just kind of standard boilerplate information that was generated by AI. But then I also have an events page, and my events page is a list that I just dropped in based on a view of our virtual table. So it's not very pretty, so you'll forgive me for that, but it's got all the information that we saw in our Copilot, and it's got the links out. It's got an image that's fantastic, and when things are happening. I think we have some date time offset issues with this because it might be happening at 2 a.m., but probably not. Something to figure out there, but and we can search from here too as well. So I can let's see if we can find things about sharks. There we go. There's all the Shark Reef Aquarium things that are coming up. But I want to be able to ask Copilot, or I want people to have the experience to start with Copilot and then actually get to this events page. To do that is pretty straightforward from a low code perspective. If we go to setup in Power Pages, we say add Copilot. It's that easy. You can pretty much churn it on directly from the Power Pages designer. If you don't have a Copilot already existing, it will create one for you. So very nice, right? It's kind of an easy click button way to get started with it. But there are a few things that I'd kind of like to do better. The look and feel, not great, in my opinion. It's kind of gray, boring header. I could maybe add some CSS to spruce it up a bit. But if I ask it, are there any shows related to Elvis? It's going to give me some results. And my flow that I set up, I specifically said, give me back the first 5 results for the Copilot. And what I'd really like, there we go. What I'd really like is to redirect people, right? So here's my 3 results. I only got 3 back, so maybe that was the wrong one to ask. But what I'd really like to do is say, okay, here's the top 5 events. But also, you know what? Go check out our events page because we've got all of them listed there, and you can find out more. You can kind of self-serve. So in order to do that, I'm actually going to employ some client-side changes to our Power Pages site. And when I say client-side, we're talking about JavaScript. But I'm also going to spruce this up and make it look a little bit nicer. So how do we do that? Well, if we come back to our designer here, we've got this beautiful button. When I found this, I was floored. That can open the site in VS Code. I hadn't been using Power Pages in a long time, and when I saw this, I was very impressed. So this actually opens up a GitHub workspace, and I could have used Copilot for Power Pages there, but I turned it off. And yeah, and here we are in VS Code with all of our site information, all of our HTML, our JavaScript, our CSS, and we can actually start modifying this and then pull it back in. So I'm going to do this in 6 minutes. That's how much time we have. So to do that, I've got a Copilot web template over here, and this is basically just some HTML. I'm pulling in the endpoint for our bot, and then I'm doing kind of intercepting information that's coming from the bot and also information that's going out. So you can see this action type direct line incoming activity. I'm actually going and looking at that activity. So I'm looking at what the bot is telling the user, and I'm looking for specific words in there like events. So if what the bot is responding with relates to events, I actually want to give them a link to our events page. So that's all I'm doing. I'm intercepting that message. I'm adding a little bit of markdown to the message before I actually send it to the user. But you can also do the same thing. You can, same thing on the outbound side. So you can dispatch information to the bot without the user knowing. So you can send messages to the bot about, and we're all, I think, US based here. So if there's cookies and things like that you're reading, you can pass those off to the bot to let it know who the person is, and things like that. So you have this direct line to the bot that you can use in JavaScript. And I can embed this fairly simply just by going to my footer here and putting in a little bit of Power Pages Markdown. So I'm going to just include my Copilot template in my footer template. That way I don't have to replicate it on all my pages and things like that. So it'll show up everywhere. And then I also want to style it. So if we go to themes, I'm going to pull in a little bit of CSS in here. And that's actually a lot of CSS. And I'm just going to throw that in there. So we're going to make it look a little bit cleaner. All right, and then come back here. we'll sync, and that should pull in our changes. And what we'll see is now we have a completely different look and feel for our bot, and we also have some additional functionality. Give that a second. Or more. There we go. And let's go ahead and preview this. All right, so already we have a different icon here. You can actually see it's got this nice halo around it. It looks prettier. And if I, say, are there any Elvis shows happening this week? Same sort of query. I should get back similar results, but this time I'm actually going to get a little bit of additional information to go to our events page. So pretty cool, right? And there's our events page. So that's pretty much it. And I will jump back to the slides just real quick to recap so that and if we go slideshow from current, right? So we looked at custom APIs and Copilot actions. We looked at Azure functions, virtual table providers, client-side scripting. There's a lot you can do when you get to sort of the end of your abilities with the low-code stuff. So keep that in mind, even if you're not a coder. In an hour, we kind of showed a whole gamut of things that you can do and possibilities. And so, there's limitless possibilities, I suppose, using pro code techniques.